Local programming on KRWG made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you. Now, the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce presents the Las Cruces City Council Election Forum, Districts 1, 2, and 4, taped as a public service by KRWG.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Margie Huerta, and I am chair of the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce. I just want to thank everyone for viewing and for watching this important forum today. And we're proud at the Chamber to bring this important forum to you, to bring you the candidates, and for them to give them their positions on different issues that the Chamber deems important. To start off, I'd like to thank our sponsors, which include the Building Industry Association of Southern New Mexico, the Las Cruces Association of Realtors, Las Cruces Bulletin, Las Cruces Sun News, and of course, our host, KRWG. We feel at the Chamber that it is important for us to bring as an organization important issues to our viewers and to our members. And we provide valuable services as part of our mission to make sure that our audiences and our members are informed of the issues. So tonight, we celebrate our 5th annual forum that we provide each year for the last 5 years to give you information so that you can make informed decisions as you go out and vote in November. I'd like to go over the ground rules for the forum. The candidates each have 60 seconds to answer the question, and the 60 seconds may only be used to answer the questions at hand. Candidates should not mention their opponents nor their opponent's position at any time. There are no rebuttals, as this is a forum and not a debate. And it is designed to field as many questions as possible. The candidates in the left to the right are in order of the top to the bottom on the ballot positions. And we're very happy this evening to start with those questions. So, are you ready, candidates? Shall we get started? To begin with, I'd like to introduce the two that are with us this evening. First, we have Councilman from District 1, Miguel Silva. We have Miss Natalie Chadbourne, who is running also for District 1. Welcome, the two of you.
Thank you.
To begin this evening, we'd like to ask Mr. Silva to answer the question first.
Sure.
And the question is this, Mr. Silva. How do you feel about adding a mandatory financial impact review that takes into account cost to city government, the citizens of Las Cruces, and the business community prior to passing future ordinances?
Could you define, what do you mean by adding, I need to define the question. I'm trying to understand the question which you just asked.
Okay, let me repeat the question to you one more time. How do you feel about adding a mandatory financial impact review that takes into account cost to city government, the citizens of Las Cruces, and the business community prior to passing future ordinances?
Well, anytime there is public participation, I support. And as I understand the question right, you're saying, how do we feel about involving the business community or someone into reviewing future budgetary decisions?
Yes.
I support that 100%. 4 years ago, I ran on public participation, transparency, accountability. And so anything or any idea that would bring added transparency and accountability to the local government, I support 100%.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chadbourne.
Can you read it one more time?
Yes, ma'am, I'll
Thank
be
you.
glad
Sorry.
to. How do you feel about adding a mandatory financial impact review that takes into account cost to city government, the citizens of Las Cruces, and the business community prior to passing future ordinances?
I think adding the mandatory review would be pertinent, especially with how we need to be fiscally responsible, and we need to have the taxpayer participation. They need to be able to say what they want to do. If they want to pass it, the businesses need to be involved in that. I think absolutely it'd be a great idea.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to question number 2, and Ms. Chadbourne, you get to go first on this one. What do you think when you hear the phrase, a business-friendly city?
I think that Las Cruces doesn't equal a business-friendly city right now. I would say maybe Albuquerque would be considered a business-friendly city. I think that Las Cruces needs to work at taking away some of the regulations that are stifling growth, stifling the businesses coming in, and then we can kind of look at that, see what the taxpayers want, have that participation. Then maybe we could say that we are a business-friendly city.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Silva.
Well, for those of you who know me personally, one of my personal adages is progress, not perfection. I don't think that there's a perfect system out there. And when we talk about being a business-friendly city, yes, we could be a lot more business-friendly. I think there are some wrinkles in the system right now, in particular in terms of the permitting. I think our new city manager right now, Robert Garza, is doing a great job in addressing these issues that are at hand. I think with the upcoming comprehensive plan, followed by addressing our zoning and our codes, which is in the future over the next 24 months, is going to address a lot of those and make the city a lot better business-friendly institution. So I think we are on our way to becoming a much more, I think, business-friendly relationship between city government and the business community.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Silva. Thank you both. And now, Mr. Silva, you get to answer this question first. Several new initiatives have been or are scheduled to be reviewed in the near future. What is your stance on the following? The 2040 plan, the Dust Ordinance, and the Lighting Ordinance?
Well, the 2040 plan, the purpose of the 2040 plan is to set the course for the next 30 to 40 years. And I don't think many people understand the purpose of the 2040 plan. I'd like to use the metaphor of going out and eating food. Mm-hmm. In other words, if this entire group here would go out and decide to go out and eat at a restaurant, we would have to first decide what kind of food we want to eat. That's the comprehensive plan. What kind of food are we going to eat first? Once we decide that, then we're going to have to decide what restaurant. And that's the comprehensive plan, which is next. That will take anywhere from 12 to 18 months. That will be followed by addressing our zoning and our codes, which will take another 24 months. Why so long? Public participation. So that's where we're headed in that direction. The dust issues are items that have been addressed per neighborhood. And in terms of the lighting issue, again, that we have an ad hoc committee that has been addressing the lighting issues as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chadbourne, your turn.
For the new initiative scheduled, for the 2040 plan, the problem I have with it is they say it's going to be used as a guide for us to look at for what's going to happen in the future. The problem is it open doors for more regulations. It starts setting forward that whole ideology that, well, but we need to have this or we need to have that. It's a guide that's going to open the door to more regulations. As far as the dust ordinance, I think the dust ordinance is silly. Number one, we live in the desert. Number two, it's windy. Now, to put that in point, when a subdeveloper or somebody comes in and they start doing, you know, their building and stuff, and then say they go bankrupt or they have a family fight and they don't want to do it anymore, and they go home and they leave kind of a mess. I think that the city already has like performance bonds that are kind of there to hold them accountable for that. And so we need to be paying attention to following through with that, telling them you need to give us a common sense solution in case you go bankrupt, whatever. And the lighting ordinance, haven't read all of it all the way, talked to some people, need to look into it a little bit more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chadbourne. We appreciate that. Ms. Chadbourne, you get to go first on this next question. If the state were to remove the hold harmless clause, what would you suggest the city do to make up for the lost revenue?
Wow. You know, for the state to remove the hold harmless clause, that would open a lot of, that'd be chaos, I think, in some ways. As far as what I think the city would need to do to be able to make up the lost revenue and things, I don't believe that I have all of the information right now, right here, to tell you what I would think would be a good idea. My brain's going in all these directions, but to give you one specific answer, I think we would need to have the taxpayer participation again. I think we would have to kind of really look at it. I can't give you a full answer at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Silva.
The hold harmless agreement, which has been in the public view for quite some time now, involves the fact of if gross receipt taxes are not reimbursed from the state, if we're not, and so right now we're very lucky that we have a good city manager and a good financial team that have built up reserves in the city that's twice our amount. We are required by state to have 1/12 of our general budget. And so the fact that we have double that is really a plus to our city. And so I think the decision will have to be made in front of the council. Should we dip into our reserves and we have sufficient revenues coming in to make up for that, that we could cover the difference there? And so I think we're in a very good position in the event that the hold harmless degree is recalled by the state.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Silva. Going on to our next question, Mr. Silva, you get to answer this one first. What ideas do you have to attract and retain businesses to Las Cruces?
Well, I really feel that we really need to increase our relationship with Movida. We have now the project down in Santa Teresa, which is bringing, it's going to bring a lot of jobs in the Santa Teresa area. So we really need to work on that relationship, both city and county, in how do we bring, have this project use Las Cruces contractors, because I think it'd be so easy for persons that are working in Santa Teresa to reach over the border in El Paso and use El Paso contractors. So I think we really have to work through Movida to say, you know, we need to employ New Mexican businesses. That's one. We need to work with the spaceport. I think the spaceport is going to provide a lot of opportunity for this area.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Silva. Ms. Chadbourne, same question.
Can you repeat it one more
I'll
time?
be glad to. What ideas do you have to attract and retain businesses to Las Cruces?
The ideas that I have right now would specifically be to, again, start going back to the regulations that we have, get rid of the impact fees, go back through the process, and start opening the door so that manufacturers can come in, the construction companies, the subdevelopers, things like that, small business owners, entrepreneurs. Make it easy. Don't make it be 9 months for them to be able to get a permit just to come in and open whatever small business they want, or the manufacturing or anything like that. I think that we need to work with the people that we currently have, like at the universities, and start bringing them in. The spaceport also I agree with that. And I think for sure, definitely, we always need to be looking at hiring the Las Cruces businesses or the businesses within the county to do our stuff.
Thank you, Ms. Chadbourne. You get the next question
Okay.
first. Would you support a tax increase without bringing it to the vote of the people first?
Absolutely not. I would not. I don't think that it's right. On August 1st, whenever I was at the city council meeting, and they had the meeting, they had like 98 people in the city hall, and everybody was going up there and saying, don't do this tax, don't do this tax, don't do this tax, and still it went through with a majority vote. I would not support it without the people, because it is their money that we are using, that we have to have fiscal responsibility with, and to say, well, we had 15 people respond, so yeah, they're good with it. No, they're not. 15 people does not represent the whole city. So I think we would definitely have to have their input. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Silva, same question.
We're trying to refer my memory back to the August 1st vote, and I don't remember the impact fee. Well, I voted no for the impact fee, so now I know which one she's referring to. I think this question that you just asked definitely ties back to the first question. Should we incorporate a review board that looks at our budget and looks at future tax revenues? I think I support something like that. I think there are times when we have to look at taxes. If we look right now at our parks, which need to be upgraded, there has been discussion, especially at the Parks Review Board, of maybe bringing forth what we call a quality of life tax. If that is brought forth, I say put it on the referendum. Let the voters decide. I think the voters should always be a part of the process.
Okay, thank you. Talking about taxes, the next question relates to a very, very relevant subject. And let me go ahead, Mr. Silva, you'll be the first to answer this question. Many consider impact fees as a form of a tax increase. The passage of these fees was hotly contested, as we all know. Would you support upholding the decision of the present council, or would you work to repeal them?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I did not support the impact fees. I voted no against them. I voted no against them for many reasons. I don't think that they sufficiently addressed the problem. The impact fees were only going to raise $25 million in total. We had, I believe, $150 million in infrastructure. So where was the gap going to be covered? That would probably be covered by the rest of Las Cruces at some point. So I did not favor that. Also, I felt very strongly that there was other alternatives and options that weren't considered, such as a sinking fund. I believe a sinking fund could be used much more appropriately for this type of situation where we have new growth paying for the new services coming in and the older part of Las Cruces remaining intact.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Chadbourne, same question.
I would not support the current council to uphold the impact fees or tax. I think that they need to repeal it. I think that they need to look at other options. They have to have a common sense approach to this. They need real taxpayer participation, not just some nonsense where they had a few meetings here and there. Anyways, no, I do not support it in any way. I think it needs to be repealed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Chadbourne. Appreciate both of you answering the question. The next question deals with an issue that faces our membership quite a bit, and that deals with opening and starting a new business. And Ms. Chadbourne, you'll get to answer this question. Some say that it is difficult to open a new business in the city due to the planning and inspection process. What would you propose to do to change this perception or to improve the process itself?
Well, just recently I was working with a group that was trying to open their little business and get into there, and it took 9 months just to get their final inspection. They went through 3 different inspectors who had probably 6 different things that they had to fix. The planner of the day, that's silly. I mean, absolutely, you come in on one day and the planner goes, oh yeah, do this, this, and this. So I come in tomorrow, well, you need to do this, and well, if I look at this, maybe, so then their interpretations are different. There's not like a streamlined process, and there's not planners that are specifically assigned these specific business permits coming in or the zoning issues and stuff. So they really need to streamline it. They need to get all of the people involved in those departments. They need to, number one, have better customer service, have more respect for the taxpayers, and they need to streamline it from the department heads down to help the people get it done quick.
Thank you, Ms. Chadbourne.
Thank you.
Mr. Silva.
Well, we've been talking about a one-stop shop for many years, and since coming aboard as a city councilor 4 years ago, we haven't made the progress that we should have in this department. And I know that in my discussions with Mr. Garza, he's aware of it. He is working towards improving the situation. Cross-training of inspectors is definitely at the top of the list. Mr. Garza and I have discussed this because he is fully aware of the situation, and it makes sense if you have one inspector who goes to a facility who is cross-trained. And so I think as we move forward in addressing this situation of expediting the process of businesses attaining certification or inspectors arriving on site, simple things like that can resolve the situation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Silva. Mr. Silva, you get to answer the next question first. What do you consider to be the single most important issue to the constituents in your district?
Well, there are several. Actually, there's 2 big ones. I think that one of the biggest ones is aging infrastructure, and especially in the older parts, the historic parts. And how do we keep on track in upgrading the roads, curbs in that area? The other, I feel, is Premier Park. I think Premier Park needs to be resolved in some shape or form, and I feel that the city may have to come in and assist with some type of just some type of mediation in some sort. So I think those are probably the 2 biggest ones, and completing Main Street. I think Main Street is going to be the economic hub of the future for downtown Las Cruces and the city. So I think those are the 3 big issues within the district.
Thank you. Ms. Chadbourne, same question.
Well, I've been out all over the district. I've been going to the city council meetings. I've been involved in other groups. I talk to a lot of people. There's several issues within the district. To put it, the number 2 issues would be the public safety and the infrastructure. Again, a lot of the citizens don't feel safe. They don't feel that there's enough officers out there patrolling, doing their thing. They're not sure that the city listens to them, makes sure that they have the proper budget. They want the city council to make sure the budget is there, all of those things. And infrastructure. Some of the people, are in precinct 20, they have no streets. Their streets haven't been done in over 20 years. They're falling apart, they're crumbling. Whenever it rains, it washes in the yard, it makes a huge mess. So those would be the number 2 things that I would look at for the district. But again, I would also do job creation, promote business, and customer service. Again, all of them coming together, they all equal the one true thing. You can't make one better than the other. They all have to work together. And I think it's achievable, and I think we can do it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This is going to be our last question before we give you an opportunity to make final remarks. So the last question, Ms. Chadbourne, you get to go first. What are the top 3 priorities for our city?
The top 3 priorities for the city, I would have to say, is funding the 911 call center, dealing with common sense with this guidance of this 2040 sustainability plan is such as it is, or if we could just get rid of it and go back to regular stuff, but allowing the businesses to come in, promoting the business, getting rid of rules and regulations. And the third one is dealing with the new growth and the development and the preservation of the historical areas, and all of those are the 3 main things that I think are for the city.
Thank you, Ms. Chadbourne.
You're welcome.
Mr. Silva, same question.
I think the 3 items for the city, the 3 major concerns again are, obviously I think it's the 911 center. I really feel that we need to continue to move forward with that project. The second one, again, is the comprehensive plan. We're at the point now of passing it, and then, the Vision 2040, and then moving forward with the comprehensive plan, and then addressing the zoning codes. Staying the course, I think, is very important. And then I think the third one is a vast array of items. Everything from, as I mentioned earlier, Premier Park, to the Animal Service Center. I think there are issues there with the Animal Service Center that needs to be addressed. And as I mentioned earlier, Main Street, completing Main Street, making sure that we have something to be proud of downtown.
Okay, thank you. And now we're at that point where each one of you can make final remarks, and Mr. Silva, you get to go first.
Okay, thank you. I want to appreciate and I thank very much for the Chamber hosting this event and allowing me to be here. I feel very comfortable speaking to the business community because that is my background, 25 years in the solid waste business. And then prior to that, I was really raised in a business environment. I was the kid selling Christmas cards, knocking on your door, growing up. What do we face in the city? I'm running because the same reason I ran 4 years ago, a better Las Cruces, and a better Las Cruces for everybody. The residents of Las Cruces, the business community, the education sector. We can make a better city. And as other persons throughout the states see Las Cruces as a premier city to move to, then it puts us in another position of growth that will really benefit everybody, mom and pop businesses, again, like I said, the education sector, and I really look forward. I think we have a really bright horizon.
Thank you, Mr. Silva. Ms. Chadbourne.
I believe that good governance is where we need to start, and that good governance is listening to the needs of the community, respecting all the views, and serving the community openly. I believe that my experience as a 911 dispatcher and owner of child care centers, I currently run a small bookkeeping business. I'm a co-owner of an apartment complex. Also, my husband runs an electrical contract company. I believe that those experiences give me understanding of the concerns and issues that are prevalent from both sides of the city and the taxpayer side. And I will be dedicated to my fellow citizens to ensure that their issues and concerns are heard and that they're taken care of in a timely and equitable manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chadbourne. Well, Mr. Silva and Ms. Chadbourne, thank you so much for your participation, and you're voluntarily willing to come forward this evening to answer the important questions that the Chamber of Commerce has before you. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you for your candid answers of the questions, and thank you for taking these questions seriously. And on behalf of not only the board, but all the membership of the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for being here. And again, best of luck to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back to the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum. We're glad that you're joining us this evening, and I want to again thank the candidates that are here tonight taking our questions, and also our sponsors. And our sponsors include the Building Industry Association of Southern New Mexico, Las Cruces Association of Realtors, the Las Cruces Bulletin, the Las Cruces Sun News, and of course our host, KRWG. Tonight it is my pleasure to introduce the candidates for District 2, starting with Mr. Fred B. Espinosa, Mr. Charles Schwartz, and Mr. Gregory Smith. We have 10 questions of you this evening, and we'll also give you an opportunity to make final remarks at the end. So we will go ahead and get started if you're ready.
Sure. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. The first question goes to Mr. Espinosa, and the question is as follows. How do you feel about adding a mandatory financial impact review that takes into account costs to city government, the citizens of Las Cruces, and the business community prior to passing future ordinances?
In regards to a review, I am wholeheartedly in favor of totally analyzing everything that would take place for the purpose of viewing impact fees or anything to do with the future. I believe the citizens of Las Cruces should have a say-so, as well as the business owners in the Las Cruces area as well.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz, you're next.
Well, it seems to me that if you complicate the procedure instead of allowing the City Council to operate like it should, then you're really interfering with the process. I can understand the concern about impact fees. I think the impact fees, for example, for public safety were necessary. I don't think the impact fees for the other things were necessary, and I noticed that the City Council put those off as well. But if we add another layer of review to this, it seems to me that we're going to interfere with the process rather than speed it up. And so I don't agree with that.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. My sense of what we elect our officials to do is to do the best they can with the information given to them to make the best decisions for the community. And I do have to agree that perhaps adding another layer of review, unless there seems to be some sort of egregious error, would unduly complicate and lengthen the process. So I would encourage us to try to trust our elected officials, do the best job we can to elect the people who can represent us in the first place, and then let them do their jobs.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Thank you, gentlemen. The next question I'll read, and then of course, Mr. Schultz, you'll get to go first. Okay. What do you think when you hear the phrase, a business-friendly city?
Well, I've been doing a lot of thinking about this because I've heard some things as I go to door to door about business, and some people seem to think that we're not a business-friendly city. In my 5 years on the Planning and Zoning Commission, I've discovered that most of the rulings and variances and annexations and so on that we've done for business have been business-friendly. As a matter of fact, I think we've done a good job. So when I think of business-friendly, I think of a community that supports its local business and particularly pays attention to local business and the promotion of local business. And that's how I view it.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, your turn.
Well, yeah, business friendly is like a lot of other things. I think Las Cruces is generally known as a friendly community. And so when you say business friendly, I suppose that is one of those kind of qualifiers that puts you in the position of what exactly do you mean by that term. And I think that it's important for us as city councilors to look at things from the standpoint, nobody gets a free pass. No group, no organization, no project. We really need to deliberate, look at what we're talking about, and make sure that it is right for this community, right for the business here, right for the community itself, the people, and looking also at the future. So business friendly, yes, of course, but also doing our own due diligence to make sure that that business works for our community, works for itself as far as making sure that it's successful. And so to whatever degree the city can help make sure that it's going to be successful both for the business itself and the community, that's important.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Espinosa, same question.
Thank you. In regards to being a business-friendly city, I believe that Las Cruces could do a little bit better or a lot better job at working together with our local businesses in order to, first of all, eliminate the red tape that it takes in order for a business to begin the process and open the doors. In regards to new industry, in regards to bringing in industry into the community, I believe we need to take a stronger, more intricate look at the process and make it more accessible for our businesses. Sure, I strongly believe that there should be rules and policies in place. However, bringing in business will bring sustained growth, will bring more jobs to the community, will also give us an opportunity to grow entirely in the national setting as the city of Las Cruces.
Thank you, Mr. Espinosa. Next question, we'll start with Mr. Smith first, and here it is. Several new initiatives have been and/or are scheduled to be reviewed in the near future. What is your stance on the three following? The 2040 plan, the Dust Ordinance, and the Lighting Ordinance? Mr. Smith, you go first.
Thank you. Well, the 2040 plan, I've mentioned the other day when I was at the LCAR forum that, you know, it's hard to put something in place that's going to look 30 years into the future. When we look back 30 years, we have, we didn't have cell phones like we do now. It was an emerging technology, and so cell phone towers are now an issue that wouldn't have been happening at that degree 30 years ago. So I do think that the 2040 plan needs to be a guideline. It needs to be something that helps us look to the future, but we need to be working on harder-based or foundation type of plans for 5-year plans, things like that, that are more attainable and more flexible along the lines of what emerging technologies, emerging opportunities and challenges may be happening. The other two, we talked about the Dust Ordinance. I think we absolutely need to make sure that we are working in a way that helps our air quality stay clean. And the Night Sky Ordinance is sort of unequally administered. The university itself.
Okay, thank you. We're out of time. Mr. Espinosa, you're next. Same question.
Thank you. In regards to the 2040 plan, I believe it's a good idea to have vision for the city of Las Cruces. And by looking at that vision, before you can go forward, it's important that you say, we have a good, strong foundation where we are today. So I believe that the immediate need of taking a look at our structure and how we do business and the things that we do in Las Cruces as an entire foundation have to be addressed. And it's important that we work on the short term before we work on the long term. There is a lot of needs that have taken place. Working in the business sector myself in regards to sales and customer service, there are a lot of businesses, there are a lot of public citizens, there are a lot of issues in regards to public safety, in regards to policy that we need to address, and those things are extremely important for the future of our families of Las Cruces. Regarding the Dust Ordinance, I believe the Dust Ordinance is something that I don't believe is that important. We have a lot of vacant lots, and maybe we can work alongside of the business owners to see what we can do to create vegetation until those vacant lots are built into. Lighting, of course, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Espinosa. Mr. Schultz, you're next.
Well, I was the vice chair of the 2040 Commission, and when we put together that vision statement, which you can check out on my website, I discovered that a lot of people didn't understand what a visioning process was really about. And it's not about making a plan that you follow, rather it's about showing you the directions that you can go and the possibilities, and I think the 2040 plan does a good job of this. And I see that as a basis for comp plans that will be developed by the county and by the city, and ultimately codes that will be developed by the county and the city. In terms of the Dust Ordinance, I have mixed feelings about it. I've seen the dust storms roil across Las Cruces and know that much of our dust comes from agricultural land and comes from the West Mesa, and there's not much we can do about that. So I think that perhaps, that's the thing that we'll have to consider. As far as the lighting ordinance, I'm definitely in favor of it. I like to look at a dark sky, and I think most of my friends do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Espinosa, you get to answer the next question first. If the state were to remove the hold harmless clause, what would you suggest the city do to make up for the lost revenue?
Could you please elaborate in regards to the hold harmless clause, please?
Well, it's a clause that if we remove it, will have an impact in terms of the revenues, and so it's asking what would we do, what would the city do to make up for that lost revenue?
I believe that by taking a look at the programs that we have in place right now, youth programs, parks and recreation, some of the other programs that we have, throwing or removing one particular clause without reviewing the entire process, I believe would be harmful or detrimental. So an entire review should take place before that is taken into consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Espinosa. Mr. Schultz, you're next.
Oh, there we go. I would say that there are probably a couple ways to raise revenue to compensate for this. But it seems to me that the city has very large cash reserves right now I recall when the mayors were discussing at the League of Women Voters last Wednesday, I think Mayor Miyagishima mentioned that the city has essentially has extensive cash reserves. Perhaps we could cover this with existing money. And if we couldn't, then perhaps we can cover it with economies in administration.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes, my understanding is that the hold harmless situation is coming about because of the GRT and the fact that some things are not being taxed that such as food items, and so the city is losing a significant amount of GRT revenue each year that the food is not taxed. And so that's what the hold harmless does for us, is that it actually then the state compensates us for money that we could be otherwise making. And so yes, we could cut back on various activities that cost quite a bit. We could certainly try to be more efficient, and we could be working on a lot of things, but I think we also have to look at other revenue enhancement opportunities, because the amount of money is in the millions and it's significant and not something that could be easily compensated for.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We're on to our fifth question, and Mr. Schultz, you get to go first on this one. What ideas do you have to attract and retain businesses to our great city?
Well, one of the ideas I came up with, and this I got from a person I was talking to door, was to talk about how important support of local business is. And it seems to me that the city ought to consider a buy local policy. In other words, what they would do is look at local suppliers first instead of looking at out of town or out of state or even out of country suppliers. I don't think we have to hire engineers from Albuquerque to design our roads. I don't think we have to hire architects from other states to build our buildings. I think we have all that talent here, and it seems to me if we develop that kind of policy, then people will be attracted to Las Cruces, and they'll say, well, if I move there, if I locate my business there or start my business there, it's going to grow because they support local business.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, same
yes,
question.
Dr. Huerta, could you read that question again, please?
Yes, I certainly will.
Thank you.
What ideas do you have to attract and retain businesses to Las Cruces?
Thank you. Well, one thing I think is the quality of life that we have here, the quality of life infrastructure, the sense of place, and some of the things that I've worked on, of course, are the Downtown Las Cruces Partnership, trying to make sure that our downtown is an inviting place, a place that shows that we take pride in our community. And I believe that if we have a thriving downtown, that attracts business to this community. I think if we have amenities such as recreational areas, libraries, public services, that people say, you know what, our executives, our business people, our various people at various levels in our business will enjoy being in that community, that sort of thing also helps attract business to this community. So I think those are important features. And then of course, looking at the kinds of incentives that can be put in place to help people say, this is an environment where I can start my business, I will be supported, it'll be encouraged. I think all of that will be very helpful.
Thank you. Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you. As a city councilor, I believe that our positions go beyond what we do in city council. We work as ambassadors for the Las Cruces area. And of course, by mentioning that, first of all, do we have a plan or a process in place right now where we can say it's easy and it's more accessible, not necessarily easy, but is it more accessible for a business to be able to come to Las Cruces? Can we recruit that business? Are we gonna work alongside of those businesses to be able to create a strong enough structure so that we can build and create jobs for entry-level positions, as well as recruit from the university and Doña Ana Community College? I think those things are important to be able to see so that we can have a plan in place and be, as the ambassadors, somebody who can go out and work to bring in that industry into the community.
Thank you, Mr. Espinosa. Next question, Mr. Smith, you'll get to go first. Would you support a tax increase without bringing it first to a vote of the people?
Well, this is a really tough time, and we're looking at all kinds of ways that we can, enhance the revenues, make sure that things are getting paid for, that services and things are happening that need to keep our community in the running for things. Taxes are not my first choice for how to do that, and I think that we have to absolutely look at, what are the different options, and then perhaps that is an area that would need to be brought to the public in a referendum before implementing it. I suspect I know what the answer would be, too.
All right, thank you. Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you. In regards to a tax increase without a vote, I'm wholeheartedly in favor of allowing the citizens of our city to make that decision with a vote. But in addition to that, by working alongside of the city and the leaders of our city, taking a look at the reasons for that tax increase, and before we go to that, there's got to be other options that we can address before that can take place.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz, same question.
I recall when I moved here from Canada, I left an environment that was heavily taxed. And I remember going through the border and people saying, well, don't you pay too many taxes in Canada? And I'm saying, yes, but we get pretty good services for them. And it seems to me that if you allow the people to vote on taxes, they're going to say no, because nobody wants to pay more taxes. That's understandable. On the other hand, if you allow people to vote on services, on what services they want or what services they believe they need, then I think you'll see a positive sort of thing. It's kind of like we do with school bond issues. We don't sell school bond issues on the fact that you're going to have to pay off the bonds. We sell them on the fact that we're improving the education possibilities of our community. And I think that's the way to approach it.
Thank you. Next question, Mr. Espinosa, you'll get to go first. Many consider impact fees as a form of a tax increase. The passage of these fees was hotly contested, as we all know. Would you support upholding the decision of the present council, or would you work to repeal it?
I would personally work to repeal it. I believe that impact fees would be detrimental for the current business structure, for builders that are working for businesses that are in the Las Cruces area as well. I believe in the past this has taken place. The question that I would ask was, what happened to those impact fees that we have taken in the past, and was that money applied and used in the correct manner? So no, I am not for impact fees.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz, same question.
Well, there are two parts to the impact fees, and the first part was for public safety. I'm definitely for that, because I think we need the money for public safety. The second part was for roads and drainage. It doesn't look to me like we really need that. In fact, the City Council put it off until 2013, which leads me to believe that they probably think that we don't need it right away either. On the other hand, who benefits from the impact fee? Well, actually, the public benefits, because the people who are paying for the new construction, whether it's a new house or a new factory or a new commercial building, are the ones that benefit from it. And that means that the taxpayer doesn't have to pick up that load. And so I think that's a pretty fair system.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes, well, one of the things, to address one part of your question, that I would like to avoid, if at all possible, is trying to go back and change past decisions. I think that Las Cruces has suffered from one council coming in and trying to undo what a previous council has done. And so regardless of the actual benefit of the impact fees themselves or detriment, I would say that I would really like to avoid trying to come in retroactively undo what a previous council has done. We have all kinds of projects that have started, money that's been wasted because something got started and then somebody else came along and voted no on it. So I would suggest that if at all possible, we try to work with that. And one of the things that I've been assured by the council members is that if the economic situation has not improved, then in addition to part of it being delayed until January and part of it being delayed until 2013, the rest of it could be delayed further.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Moving on to the next question, Mr. Schultz, you'll get to answer this one first. Some say that it is difficult to open a new business in the city due to the planning and inspection process. What would you propose to do to change this perception or to improve the process itself? Mr. Schultz.
Well, I think the community development people have gone a fair way in reducing the red tape in terms of the permitting process. But I noticed the other day that our city manager, Robert Garza, started conducting what were essentially customer service seminars. And I believe they did these last Wednesday. It seems to me they filled the city hall about 3 times with people who work for the city, who have to get the idea that they're working for us. They're working as our servants, if you will, civil servants. And I think this is a step in the right direction. And I think what will happen eventually is this, if it's modeled correctly, this will trickle down, and eventually we will have people who are in the city who will treat the public as customers, because that's what they are.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes, I agree. This is essentially a customer service question, and the efforts that are already being mounted by the city to do a better job of being a friend to the business community, to anybody coming in for the permitting process, I think is a good step in the right direction. And that's something also that we were pushing for, especially for the downtown folks, because there's a special set of circumstances when people are coming in dealing with historic buildings, that sort of thing, and they don't always get the help that they need under those circumstances. So I would recommend, in addition to the customer service kind of training and that sort of thing, possibly an ombudsman program or some other friend to help, city employee as friend in that process, to help guide people through, to help make sure the steps are being taken, to help make sure that all of those pieces are understood and somebody isn't falling through the cracks and then being, nope, you can't do it. So letting them succeed as opposed to blocking them.
Thank you. Mr. Espinosa.
In regards to the process that it takes for example, for a new business to come into town, or for a gentleman whose fence has fallen down and he wants to rebuild it, I believe that there should be a way that we can prioritize as a city how we look at codes enforcement and how we enforce those codes in a business-friendly, in a community-friendly manner as well. I believe that placing quotas or making it mandatory for codes enforcement to look for issues or ideas, I believe it's taking away from the trust that the city has with the local community. And I believe that we should have somebody that's in place, a team of people in place that are, number one, have professional experience, number two, that have been down the road and have built buildings and built businesses in the community to be able to make educated decisions and help to make those decisions for the future of our city regarding codes and how we enforce those codes.
Thank you. All right, our next question, Mr. Smith, you'll get to answer first. What do you consider to be the single most important issue to the constituents in your district?
I believe for a lot of us, and I'm going to extend this out to the whole city, but I believe it's true of the people in my district as well, is that job creation or job development. And it's not the city's job to do that, but the city can make an environment where that happens. And jobs by themselves are not really what my end goal is here, but from the standpoint of the quality of life that we hope to enjoy here, the jobs, the gainful employment, the rewarding employment for people in this community means that we have greater income for the creation of that infrastructure, the creation of that quality of life, those kinds of things. And so I think a higher level of employment that ties in with the training that people will get at Doña Ana Community College and at NMSU and in their high schools and other places that they may go, so that we are employing people in a responsible way. Thank you.
Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you. I believe that in walking and talking to the constituents of District 2 and throughout the city, I believe that the number one key factor here is that family matters most. Regardless of where we are, we have family. The people that we communicate with, the people that we work alongside of, the people that we solve the issues that we go through on a daily basis, whether it's income, whether it's not losing a job, whatever those situations are. And all of those things encompass, of course, our public safety. Do we have an adequate public safety? It has not grown in the same manner as the city has grown. Industry, are we bringing industry into the community? Are we helping to build a stronger infrastructure of industry for the education, for the employment of our community and our citizens? And city accessibility, being able to know that you can go to the city, that you can speak to those people within the city, and that you know that your questions rather, will be answered and your problems will be solved in an adequate manner.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz.
Well, as I go door to door, I find that the number one problem is definitely rental housing. It's ironic that in neighborhoods where the houses cost $300,000 to $400,000, there are houses for rent. It's not surprising that around the university we have a lot of rental housing. It's not surprising also that in older neighborhoods we find a lot of rental housing. But the problem with rental housing appears to be maintenance. A lot of the people who own rental houses obviously live elsewhere, and aren't really paying attention to cutting the weeds, to cleaning up the trash, and there doesn't seem to be much responsibility about this. And it seems to me that this is the kind of thing that drags down neighborhoods. Most of the neighborhoods I've been in are full of people who've lived there a long time and are very proud of what their neighborhood is. But if there's a lot of rental housing or abandoned housing in some cases, then obviously this is going to drag down property values, and this is something we need to address.
Okay, thank you. Next question deals with the top 3 priorities for the city. Can you please identify them? Beginning with Mr. Espinosa, you go first.
The right industry to move into the city of Las Cruces and working for a growth plan so that we can build a stronger Las Cruces industry, bringing more jobs to the city. The second priority would be public safety, which I believe we need to address the police and how we handle the police. And the third would be Parks and Recreation, taking a look at the facilities that we have for our youth and seeing what we can do to make stronger youth programs for our children, for our youth, for our families.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz.
Well, again, going door to door and listening to what people say, it seems to me that the thing that resonates with most people is planned development. And it's not that we haven't had planned development, but let's face it, we're playing catch up in a lot of places. And the second thing I am concerned about, and I think is important to the city, is not to let any neighborhood fall behind. Some of the neighborhoods I've been in haven't had their streets paved in 20 years. Some of the neighborhoods I've been in are still on septic, even though the septic fields the leach fields are failing for them. And the third thing is crosstown access. We have about 3.5 streets in Las Cruces now that go all the way across town. It seems to me we need to improve that in order to improve traffic flow and to make people feel better on their way to work or on their way home.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Yes, well, back to the 3 topics. Las Cruces is extremely fortunate to have the economic stability that it does. We haven't fallen quite as far as some other communities have, but I still believe that for us, jobs is a key piece in moving forward, in maintaining that place, not only for the retirement community who comes here, but also for the families who either want to stay here, people who have gone to college or have gotten training and want to be able to stay in this community, and they're not able to find the jobs here. So that is a very key piece. It's still at the top of my list. The infrastructure to support both the quality of life and the businesses and the community is important. And then community pride. I think that if we are working on, that's my number 3, if we are working on those other things and we are accomplishing the things that we need to do in those areas, we're going to have less crime, we're going to have greater opportunities to do things in this community.
Thank you. And now is the opportunity for each of you to make your final remarks. We will begin with Mr. Schultz. You get to go first.
If you want to know where I stand, what I believe in, or what I'll fight for as your city councilor, then visit my website, charlieforcitycouncil.com. If you check me out, I'm convinced you'll vote for me, Charlie Schultz, for District 2 City Councilor on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
I hope you've had a chance to see how I would work in the City Council to improve what we experience here and what those who will follow us will experience. This truly is about establishing an enviable quality of life in Las Cruces for ourselves and our children. I believe my experience as a teacher, as president of the Downtown Las Cruces Partnership, chairing the Mesilla Valley Centennial Planning Committee, and living in and visiting so many different places on this planet have prepared me well for the office of Las Cruces City Councilor for District 2. In that role, I will work to bring and develop more rewarding jobs here, to ensure that we have stable infrastructure supporting what we do and enjoy, and to leave this community with a lasting legacy of prosperity stretching far into the future. I have been, I am, and I will be about all of us enjoying a great quality of life in Las Cruces.
Thank you. Mr. Espinosa.
Thank you. As a lifelong resident of Las Cruces, growing up here, living under the roof of working parents, understanding the issues and concerns of the natives of Las Cruces, retiring from the United States Air Force and coming back to my hometown that I love dearly, I do understand one thing, that it's important for everyone to get involved with the future of our community, with the future of the decisions that are being made regarding our city. I'm a firm believer in family values. I think that we should take a stronger look at the things that matter to people, not necessarily that are the things that don't matter are things that are inanimate. The city of Las Cruces is very important to me and very important to the people, the constituents of District 2 and the city as well. And it's my pleasure, what a tremendous honor it is to be a part of this wonderful process. And I'm grateful to all of the people who have supported me and who continue to do so as well. Thank you.
Well, gentlemen, on behalf of the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce Board and its members, thank you so much for your participation this evening. I know November 8th is just around the corner. I'm sure you're counting down every day. Best of luck to all of you. Thank you for your participation here today and for your candid and transparent answers that you gave us. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. Stay tuned because we will then have our candidates for District 4. Welcome back, viewers. I'm Margie Huerta, Chair of the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce, where this evening tonight we have the forum for the candidates for City Council, and we're glad that you're joining us. And again, we're happy that tonight we have the candidates running for District 4. And I'd like to once again thank our sponsor this evening. It's not possible to have these events without thanking our sponsors, of course, and their great support. I'd like to start off by thanking the Building Industry Association of Southern New Mexico, the Las Cruces Association of Realtors, the Las Cruces Bulletin, the Las Cruces Sun News, and of course, our wonderful host, KRWG. I'd like to again introduce our guests that are here this evening, running for District 4. Councilor Nathan Small, welcome this evening.
Thank you
and
very
Mr.
much.
Aaron Henry Diaz, thank you for being here this evening. We have about 10 questions for you this evening, and we'll also give you an opportunity at the end to make final remarks. And we'll alternate who goes first, and so best of luck this evening. Thank you for being here tonight. We'll go ahead and get started if you're ready. Are you both ready?
I think we are.
Okay, I'm ready too. So let's get started. And Mr. Small, you get to go first. The first question is, how do you feel about adding a mandatory financial impact review that takes into account costs to city government, the citizens of Las Cruces, and the business community prior to passing future ordinances?
Thank you very much, Dr. Huerta. I think that's an outstanding idea, and I think it's something that needs to be explored deeply and fully. The idea of understanding where impacts and what benefits are going to be accrued through not only projects but ordinances, I think, is one whose time has come. I've certainly been a great advocate. Businesses in our area, we've been able to cut permit times by a month in some cases to get businesses open sooner. And so we've seen that there's the opportunity to improve. And in the sense of looking at that review, I think you have to be very careful on how that's structured. There's going to be a lot that goes into it. But the idea of being able to put objective information, to put the science out, as it were, on issues that come before city government and that affect city residents is a positive one, and one that I look forward to learning more about.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz, same question.
Thank you, Dr. Huerta, and thank you to the Chamber of Commerce as well as KRWG for having me today. As any small businessman or large business, they always have a cost-benefit analysis whenever they're doing any sort of new procedures or initiatives. It's time that our city government incorporates such business practices, not only for the solvency of the future Las Cruces budgets, but also to maintain a budget that's going to be able to support our necessities as well as essential government services. So I do support such a measure in the future council when I am serving.
Thank you. And Mr. Diaz, you get to answer this question first. So your next question for both of you is this one. What do you think when you hear the phrase, a business-friendly city?
I think of my hometown, Las Cruces. I think of countless entrepreneurs, large and small business owners who have come to Las Cruces for the past 150 years. We have had pioneers come into our valley, young and old, who had seen opportunity to take initiative and to make a living and make a prosperous Las Cruces all at once. We've lost sight of that in Las Cruces. I think there have been government regulations as well as unnecessary government ordinances in Las Cruces that have taken effect to push an agenda that has made Las Cruces not one of the best places to do business, as we have seen in the last 10 years. So, as a councilman once elected, I want to make Las Cruces a proud environment to do business once again for small businessmen as well as large businesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Small, same question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I certainly think of a community with beautiful views of the mountains, a wonderful river running right through the middle, and the beautiful mesas on either side. So I think of Las Cruces. I think businesses want consistency. They want good communication between all the various entities that are involved in a community, and they want a place where they can feel certain that their interests are being looked out for, both as businesses and as citizens. Again, my work, we've done a lot of good revitalization on some of the corridors, and not just Main Street. Along El Paseo, we had a revisioning project, with one of the biggest things to come out of that is streamlining the permit process. And one of the biggest employers to come to our town will be opening up soon there along El Paseo. We've done the same out there, beginning to do the same along Picacho Avenue, a project where businesses came from the community, and I was very proud to support their efforts and to bring the city as a partner to help foster business. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, our third question, Mr. Small, you'll get to answer that one first. And here it is. Several new initiatives have been and/or are scheduled to be reviewed in the near future. What is your stance on the following three? Number one, the 2040 plan. Number two, the Dust Ordinance. And number three, the lighting ordinance.
Sure.
Mr. Small, you get to go first.
Excellent, thank you. With Vision 2040, quite simply, it was a great way to bring our entire community together and get us not only thinking about the present, but far into the future. I think there's been an outstanding committee formed. I think what's going to come out of that will be adopted in the form of a resolution, which will be a guide and will be solid information to refer back to for all different sectors of our community moving forward. When we look at the Dust Ordinance, we've had significant issues that have been raised by citizens in our community. I think as honest representation, when an issue is brought, we have to seriously investigate it. I think what's come out of that, again, when we talk about consistency and certainty, there's a need for that on the Dust Ordinance, and I think we're moving in that direction. Finally, when we go with the lighting ordinance, the biggest issue is about businesses attaining standards that have been set and that were grandfathered in. I think thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you. I think Vision 2040 had good intentions, and there were good people behind this plan. But unfortunately, there are elements in this plan that run counter to a progressive, business-friendly environment. I'm opposed to Vision 40 being a binding resolution or ordinance. It should be more of a guide that supplements our vision for Las Cruces in the future. I'm against any dust ordinance. We live in the desert. How can we make such a dust ordinance when we know it's going to be a natural effect? We can't control nature. And of course, our lighting. The lighting ordinance, unfortunately, another good intention, but again, these are going to hurt families, homeowners, as well as businesses in our community. Lighting ordinance is another inefficient, unnecessary ordinance taken by the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, Mr. Diaz, you'll get to answer first. If the state were to remove the hold harmless clause, what would you suggest the city do to make up for the lost revenue?
Thank you. There are many ways to make up for lost revenue. And there are ways such as streamlining and focusing and reprioritizing what is essential to government, what is essential to the municipality. Our government needs to provide three basic services, and these are public safety, maintaining our roads and our codes, as well as ensuring there's economic development. So there are areas in our government budget that needs to be reevaluated. So that is one way we can make sure that we maintain revenue in our budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Same
Thank
question.
you very much. The first answer is that we have to do everything in our power to ensure that if hold harmless is changed, that it needs to be changed gradually. That has been the focus moving forward. And I think we're moving in that direction as far as a coordinated effort amongst all cities, because it's an incredibly important part, whether you're a big or a small city, that portion of the budget. The city of Las Cruces has been able to cut $7 million from our budget over the past few years. We've just recently undergone an effort where we cut over 100 vehicles from the fleet, and we're looking at ways to streamline the facilities. So as we increase investments in critical things that I've advocated, such as road maintenance, such as public safety, I've been actually so far the only person to be able to articulate a few of the specific areas where we need to look at the cuts. Hold Harmless is so significant that it needs to be phased in and not just drawn away all at one time.
Thank you. Mr. Small, you'll get to answer this next question
Sure.
first. What ideas do you have to attract and retain businesses to our great city?
Absolutely. I talk a lot about building community. So one of my initiatives on the bigger level was to bring a community coalition to tour parts of the West Mesa. Up there we toured the Sapphire Energy, and what's interesting about that is that it brings the values key to our community with agriculture, with New Mexico State University, together with a focus on high technology for helping our future. Our work within the existing corridors, I think, is also beneficial. We've seen big businesses, whether it's Tractor Supply, whether it's Pros Ranch Markets, come to corridors that we're working on revitalizing. But a concurrent part of that, and one that I'm very excited about, is some of the storefronts working to get small businesses and local businesses to come into these areas as you get these anchor tenants coming in. I think it's so critical that we have good communication, which I've worked to foster between different sectors of our community. And I would be remiss if I don't mention DACC and NMSU and their key role in pushing economic development and the partnership we need.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you. One way that we can attract business to Las Cruces and develop our economic development here is obviously partnering with our educational institutions, and not only with New Mexico State University, as well as Doñana Community College, but also our trade schools, our labor vocational schools, and partnering with businesses who are looking for young adults or even adults that are into another career, and providing an opportunity for them to have sustainable jobs here. We have the labor force in Las Cruces, and they're trained, I think, some of the best trained labor force in the nation. We need to do a better job at making Las Cruces a lucrative place to come and do business. So that right there is what we need to do for our future and for our economy and for the young people graduating our institutions.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz, you get to answer the next question first. Would you support a tax increase without bringing it first to a vote of the people?
At this point, I would not support any tax increase. We are in the middle of a recession. We're in the middle of an economy where young families, college graduates, as well as our elderly, are suffering. And we need to be more responsible to understand before we do and consider a tax increase that this is the plight and this is their reality. So as a counselor, I'm opposed to any such tax increase, but I would support public input and a referendum perhaps on that for a tax increase, but I do not support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Small.
Thank you very much. I think the principle of having public ownership and public involvement in any decision, and we've worked very hard, and I've worked very hard as a counselor to foster that, whether it's with some of the economic initiatives, whether it's with educational initiatives and supporting some of the great work that's been done with things like the Bridge program that came up and sprung up as a local effort from different constituencies. I think when we look at the idea and the potential of a tax increase, having that public involvement at all levels, including in that decision-making, ultimate decision-making role, is a good place for us to be right now, given our economic times and given the need to foster public involvement in our community.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Small, you get to go first next. Many consider impact fees as a form of a tax increase. The passage of these fees was hotly contested, as we all know. Would you support upholding the decision of the present council, or would you work to repeal them?
Sure. Thank you for the question. At that time, there was general agreement from all sectors of the community, and including those in the room, that infrastructure had not been provided for. There were too many examples, whether it was with flood control, whether it was with roads such as Sonoma Ranch not being finished. There was agreement that things needed to be done better. There was disagreement on the way to do that. A number of folks who ultimately opposed the ordinance suggested other ways, either a gross receipts tax increase upon the whole population here in Las Cruces or a property tax increase. I think at the end of the day, those two ideas weren't as fair as what was done. What was done was in a sustained manner for implementation in 2013, and between taxing the entire population for the city of Las Cruces for some of the projects such as finishing Sonoma Ranch or building an Arroyo crossing, I think the route that was chosen was more fair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Diaz, same question.
I think it's important that we realize, yes, we are part of a community, and an ever-growing community. But this was an irresponsible tax that is going to affect the consumer mostly. And when I say that, the consumer is going to be our young families. It's going to be businesses that are looking to come to Las Cruces. So I would support rescinding this irresponsible initiative and look to other ways to foster a responsible growth and a responsible shared ownership of our roads and development. Thank you.
Thank you. You get to go first, Mr. Diaz.
Thank you.
For the next question. Some say that it is difficult to open a new business in the city due to the planning and the inspection process. What would you propose to change in this to change this perception rather, or to improve the process itself? Mr. Diaz.
I think it's a simple issue and it's a simple answer. It's bringing our industries together in Las Cruces, our representatives from those industries, to create a committee or create a forum where we can actually review the unnecessary ordinances and regulations that has made Las Cruces, unfortunately, a hard place to start a business, a hard place to relocate a business. So as a counselor, I will definitely support the review of our ordinances that could particularly be hurtful to the development of business in Las Cruces.
Thank you. Mr. Small.
Thank you for the question. Again, under my watch, we were able to get permitting done more quickly for businesses in different parts of District 4. What I noticed first started on the permitting side and the inspection side. Currently, there's not cross-training for inspectors, so you have to have different folks going out to inspect different things. That leads to delays. That needs to change at the state level, which we're advocating for. Secondly, we've undergone and begun a review of the timeline for getting reviews back on permits. Sometimes the timeline can be all the way up to 8 or 10 days, but in reality, the work can be done in 4 or 5. That's how we were able to have the time. That's how we were able to cut time it takes to get permits. And even in the current climate, we've been able to have, I believe it's something on the order of 600 new businesses open up. We're ranked in the top 15 of Forbes in 2011 for the best places to do business. So I think there's specific tweaks, stuff that I've led on that can improve, but we're starting in a good place. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question deals with the important issues regarding your constituents in your district. So Mr. Small, what do you consider to be the single most important issue to the constituents in District 4?
Sure. My answer to this is always the same, and it's always about building community. When we talk with folks who have lived in their homes for 20, 30, and 40 years, their community, as far as the infrastructure right outside of their home is so critical. We've been able to nearly quadruple the road maintenance budget since 2007, and that's done a lot more for existing neighborhoods than was done in the past. We also talk about building community. We talk about safety and security. I've spearheaded a new way to do neighborhood watches in our community that makes it a clear 3-step process to get that done, as well as increasing the getting a new fire station on our West Mesa, and we've been fortunate to be able to add new police officers. So when it comes down to it, we need to take care of our infrastructure, we need to invest in public safety, and building community through the economic development in terms of consensus building and coalitions is also critical. Thank you.
Mr. Diaz, same question.
I decided to run for this office because I, as part of our community, As a Las Crucean born and raised here, I listen to my neighborhoods. I listen to my neighbors, my friends and family across the district. And what is important to them at this juncture, and not my agenda, but theirs, is to reprioritize public safety, is to make sure that we double our gang task force unit with our ever-rising crime and gang activity in Las Cruces, as well as making sure that our police and fire department have adequate resources and personnel to combat this problem, as well as making sure that we are truly protected and served. I also want to make sure we have adequate 9/11 fire services as we grow in the next 10 years. Our roads and codes and solving our traffic flow problems are concerns around the neighborhoods, as well as making sure that the kids that are graduating high school are going to have the job opportunities to stay in Las Cruces and raise their family like my family and myself have been so blessed to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Diaz, can you tell us what the top 3 priorities for the city are?
Well, I think I've been redundant on this, but it is basic services. It is getting back to our essential services, and that is public safety. And that is making sure our roads and codes are maintained. And of course, economic development. Some may say, and they come forward with pie-in-the-sky initiatives, and that's good to have. But in times as this, and when the neighbors are asking, why is this road that leads to MacArthur Elementary, Cacho Middle School, why are these roads torn up? Our children deserve the best. It's time to get back to the basics and listen to our neighbors once again. So that's what the priority as a city councilman should be, and our collective city council, of course. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Small.
Absolutely. I think our first priority has to be to keep a strong and secure budget. Everything depends on that budget. We've been fortunate to keep 2 times the reserves that we're required to have. Our bonding rating has gone up, so we've kept a very good budget. That's allowed us to make targeted investments in infrastructure. So we've almost quadrupled the amount that we spend on road maintenance, which has pushed long-stalled projects forward, whether it's El Molino, Valley Drive, or just small street-based projects that helped improve quality of life. Regarding public safety, I'm proud to say that because of the strong work and the reprioritization of the budget, we have been able to move forward with station number 7 on the West Mesa to add new officers. We also have to be very careful to be able to pay for these things in the future. And I think what folks want is a leader who's able to say, this is where we want to invest and increase in our investment. This is also where we're going to have to be able to save. And we have that track record with our budget of making those savings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Small. And that concludes the 10 questions that we had for you. So now you're relieved, right? So now you have an opportunity, both of you, starting with you, Mr. Small, to give us final remarks that you'd like to share with the audience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Huerta, to the Chamber of Commerce for having us here today. Of course, as Nathan, I'm incredibly honored to represent District 4 here tonight. I believe deeply in community, and since 2007, we've pushed long-stalled projects forward. We've got a new Neighborhood Watch program, and we've brought big, medium, and small businesses to our community. We've kept our budget strong while also beginning to make those targeted investments in public safety. At the end of the day, when we talk about community, when my wife and I go out to eat, we go out to eat at restaurants in our district. We buy our Christmas gifts from the farmers market. And we've been unafraid, whether it's rolling up our sleeves to pitch in on a project there along Picacho to beautify that area, to lead a community coalition in support of local industries, or to be a strong advocate on City Council for existing neighborhoods. The leadership to make choices, to move forward and push forward on priorities is critical.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Mr. Diaz.
Thank you to the Chamber of Commerce, KRWG, and Dr. Huerta again. It's an honor and privilege to be here, and I can't think of more of an honor and privilege to serve my hometown on City Council. District 4 is tired of being ignored. They're asking for simple solutions. They're tired of rhetoric. I can be that man. I will be your hometown voice on City Council. It's going to be as easy as communicating and developing partnerships in all areas of District 4 for our common and basic simple services, or as easy as making sure that we have sustainable economic activity in Las Cruces for the future. So thank you, Dr. Huerta, and again, thank you for having us tonight.
Gentlemen, again, thank you on behalf of the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce, the board and its members. Thank you for your participation here today, for your transparency and answering these very difficult questions that I know you're getting every day. Thank you so much for that. And I want to remind the viewers to vote on November 8th. It is so important. And on behalf of the Chamber, we want to thank you for joining us this evening and for going out and voting. Thank you.